From the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, to around the globe. You're listening to Shark Bite Biz, your exclusive place for business strategy, sales, marketing, and tech in the roaring 20s. And now, here's your host, David Strausser.
Welcome to the newest episode of Shark Bite Biz. I'm your glamorous host, David Strausser, and this is your place to learn how to grow a business during global chaos. In this super hot job market, makes sense for us to have a recruiter on the show, right? His debut podcast interview, I must add. First, though, remember, if you're watching on YouTube, you can join the channel, become a baby shark, $3 a month. But if giving money through big tech isn't your thing, don't worry, we got you covered with some of the freshest coffee you'll find. Go to deadhousecoffee.com, use code SHARK. You'll get 20% off of your order, and all the proceeds directly support this channel right here. Back to today's show. As I was saying before, the job market is hot. We're going to be discussing the market, the jobs that are out there and available, and just an all-around amazing discussion. You know, really one of the cool parts that we're going to talk about, though, too, is also one of the top tech markets, a new Silicon Valley, Austin, Texas. And it is, I refer to it as the South Silicon Valley. It's a pretty gnarly environment down there, what's being built and how it has evolved throughout the years. So who is today's guest? So glad you asked. None other than Chase Kocher. Chase Kocher is the founder and CEO of aim4hire, a technology recruitment agency that partners exclusively with well-funded, hyper-growth tech startups in Austin, Texas. After 5 years in the tech consulting and recruiting space, Chase realized that most tech recruiting agencies are a dime a dozen with outdated systems that only support large operations. This led Chase to cultivate a desire to deliver value to the best up-and-coming startups in the country and fill a major gap in the talent market. And out of that, aim4hire was born. Chase, alongside his younger but taller brother and his team, are very selective with who they represent, and their quality of search, outreach, and vetting is elite. So hey, without further ado, let's bring Chase on in here.
Business strategy.
Chase, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. You, my friend, you just became Shark Bait.
I made it. I'm happy to be here, Dave.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So we have a tradition on the show. Very first question. Who are you? Where you been? What you doing? Where you going? Tell us, what makes Chase Chase?
I'm a big sports guy growing up. I got fortunate to play really small college basketball, and moved into the tech space from there out of college. Honestly, it was the writing on the wall as far as the industry to be in, and it kind of enabled me to, in a consulting capacity, to work with a bunch of different software, IT, technical type companies, like mostly larger corporations on a larger scale. So got that exposure, got recruited away to another company that wanted to do more recruiting for mid-sized companies in Austin. So I got the opportunity to launch that office at 24. I was probably drastically underqualified for that type of responsibility, but I'm grateful for that, and enabled me to kind of, I guess, build out a market and understand how the P&L of an operation works. And from there, that was kind of the birth of aim4hire, which is founded by my brother and I. We're a boutique tech recruiting type company with 10 members, and the tech talent space is quite the place to be right now. I'm very fortunate, family oriented, enjoy getting outdoors, and that's pretty much the extent of Chase.
Well, you've got to be family orientated if you work with your brother.
It's a lot. I think a lot of people probably, when they see that on paper, they're like, "Oh, that's a dicey situation."
That's a red flag.
2.5 years apart. We've certainly been through a lot, even just in our youth and growing up together and competing in different sports. So we're quite different
Who's
in a lot of
older?
ways, but I think I'd like to believe it actually plays off itself pretty well.
Who's older, you or him?
I'm the older one. I'm the
Okay.
older but shorter one. He's like 6'4". Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah. So you win in age, he wins in height. There you
Indeed.
go. That's funny. That's funny. So you're down there in Austin, Texas, and that is a booming market, booming tech space. I mean, the podcast king himself, Joe Rogan, moved down there over the last year and a half, something like that. A lot of crazy people, fun people down there. How is it down there? Give us the state of the Austin economy right now in this weird, almost, post, but not really post, maybe coming back pandemic world.
Yeah. No, Joe's here. Elon Musk, obviously, moved here. Though I know that man's on the move constantly. But it is. I was born and raised here again, kind of with my brother, obviously. So it's been fascinating to watch kind of a tech startup hub that was really led by, big companies in town like Dell and. To see the startup community really expand into what it's become now. So now it's just the top place to work, top place to move, top place to live. I feel like there's a new population of humans in Austin every day. I think it's like 100 or 150 move here a day. It's something bizarre. So it's been pretty cool to be a part of that and get to experience.
We almost,
I'd say,
my family and me, we almost moved to Austin. We were thinking, kind of like what Joe Rogan did, but probably about a year before he did it, we were just like, hey, this is too much out here. It's just too much tax, too much regulation, too much crime, too much everything in Los Angeles. And it was like, where do we go? And, fortunate enough, I think I was in a situation where I pretty much could have gone anywhere. So we were looking at Austin as one of the places to go to, but my company's like, no, we want to retain you. So move to Philadelphia and we'll make you the GM of the Northeast. So that's what we ended up doing. But I almost landed there in Austin. I mean, we were scoping it out pretty hard and I liked everything that, I was seeing, hearing the traffic complaints that you guys have out there because of the growing congestion. Like, oh, that's nothing. I'll take that any day.
We're spoiled here. We're accustomed to like a small town vibe and no lines at restaurants and things of that nature. That changed very quickly.
That's got to be fascinating, though, to see a city go through a transformation like that to where it just really blows up. It didn't happen overnight, but it almost feels like it happened overnight, doesn't it?
It does. And with COVID, you brought it up. I mean, this COVID time, like, I feel like the clock, it's hard to even remember what year it is. I feel like with kind of the COVID that,
Well, I figured that out. You know why?
How?
Because right now, a lot of people aren't doing many things. Well, maybe they are now, but before this, they weren't when the pandemic. And this is my personal theory.
Okay.
I think it is that we kind of judge time by milestone events. Of the way that things happen. Maybe it's a concert, maybe it's a dinner, wedding, funeral, stuff like that. Like something that you did. But when you're doing the same thing over and over, just gets so monotonous, especially when you're just there sitting like, okay, what's the state of the virus today? Are we allowed outside? And you're just getting that same state. It's just one big blur then, because you don't really have the milestone events. I mean, there were a couple things that you could pick out. There was a presidential election. So obviously that's big, that stands out. But then, there wasn't too much other than that. It is almost like a big blur for most people, I think, because of that reason. Whereas now, as we're starting to get out of it, like I just went to see Guns N' Roses Saturday night for their first concert of their new tour. And it was in Hershey Park, Pennsylvania. And it was awesome. I was in the pit. I mean, I basically paid ticket money for Axl Rose to sweat on me. It was awesome. And But that's kind of like a defining moment that gives us some of those milestones to have those reflections of time. That's my theory of how I think it works. I mean, what do you think of that? You think that's crazy?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I mean, so much of it is, I mean, you're so consumed outside of your work with the stress of that. And like, your friends, obviously you're not getting to see on a regular basis. You're seeing them like this virtually. Yeah, I think it was kind of a unique time maybe for some people to kind of figure out maybe who their true friends were or who are their, real go-tos. But yeah, I couldn't agree more as far as actual events and kind of backtracking, oh yeah, like 2020, that was the year I went to 3 weddings. But yeah, it just didn't happen.
No, it didn't. It didn't. And, it's the year of lockdown, and that's how half of 2021 has been. Let's see if the second half stays the same. So, you are out there as we're talking, and that's kind of why I wanted to lay the foundation for people that really don't know about Austin. You're in one of those top tech hubs in the country, one of the hottest markets. And, it's kind of weird because of COVID, the employment, the job market, it was like an employees market, and then COVID hit and everybody got laid off. And then it was an employers market for a couple months. And then as businesses got used to COVID being the standard operating procedure and figured out ways to operate under these conditions, hiring started ramping up again. And now we're at a point where it's this year where it was the employees market like we had pre-COVID, but like 10 times worse. It's pretty crazy. How do you attract talent in this type of market?
That's a $1 billion question, I'd probably argue. I mean, I think
and I asked that as we're going through a hiring frenzy for technical people ourselves. So
there you go. Hey, I think the COVID, the lockdowns, COVID itself, like it did trigger like unprecedented adoption of software or of technology in general.
Yeah.
I mean, just this.
It pushed everybody off the digital transformation edge.
Say that one more time, sorry.
It pushed everybody off of the digital transformation edge.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at healthcare and how, I mean, a lot of these industries that were fairly, outdated and didn't want to force anything if they didn't need to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess, type mentality. But as we know, technology, ends up kind of weaseling its way into almost any industry and segment and kind of disrupting that space. But yeah, I think it's been a fascinating market to even just study and kind of communicate with technical folks or just technical companies in general. Because like you said, how do you attract that type of talent? I think, at the height of COVID, obviously there were only a few types of industry segments virtual healthcare and video communications and e-commerce that were blowing up. And doing
Zoom,
great.
Look how much growth they've had. I mean, and Zoom's been around for like ever, but I don't think they've ever experienced the growth that they had during the first part of COVID because, I mean, you can kind of look at it this way, that they were ahead of the curve because other tools existed. Nobody had something that was just as easy and as cheap as Zoom was. I mean, you had GoToMeeting, you had Skype for Business, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But they weren't as easy as Zoom was. And it really just zoomed off. Yeah, check that out.
Zoom. Yeah, no, I think it was, it's always one of those, who was the first to video communications? I don't know if it was Skype. I honestly don't know. But yeah.
First video phone call took place like, what was it? It was crazy. I think it was in the 50, 60, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Seriously, the very first, I believe it was done on AT&T. I will fact check myself. First video phone call. I think it was, right here. Well, it wasn't 5060s. It was actually June 30th, 1970, between the Pittsburgh mayor, Peter Flaherty, and chairman and CEO, John Harper of Alcoa. There you go. They're two big Pennsylvania places. Alcoa was like an aluminum factory that was very, very big
Gotcha.
out here through Pennsylvania and probably other states too. And, Pittsburgh, obviously up here. But yeah, first video call. But the cost of it and the high price of the equipment's the reason why it never actually caught on up until this is what I mean, man. A lot of the technology that's out there has always existed. It just didn't exist. Like people weren't forced to use it. You know how like if you adopt a new system, they're always like, well, if you want it to be successful, it's got to come from the leadership, from management down, pushing it on to people and using it and stuff like that. The adoption. We didn't have a forced adoption of this technology up until COVID when we had no other choice. And now it's standard operating procedure. Like I said, video calls have been around for 50 years. Think about it.
Yeah. And it's a perfect example. And I think
video calls are older than me. That's insane. I mean, if you think about it.
Oh man, I believe it, Dave. I believe it.
Yeah.
I think it's little things and people talk about luck and that your company was positioned in the right place. I mean, there could be companies that had, outstanding products for the healthcare or for different industry segments, but the timing, timing's everything. Time is king in a lot of cases. And, some companies I think were well positioned for something like this and really capitalize on the opportunity. Others maybe didn't. But I think looking back, there'll be a lot of case studies to evaluate of just how companies really, handled that line in the sand of how do we either change, how do we maybe add features or look at kind of diverse ways of applying our software to other markets. How do we stay alive? How do we thrive? It's less of surviving, more thriving.
Well, I mean, in order to thrive, you do need talented people around you. So, I mean, how do you get those salary packages and benefit packages to compete with like companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook? Because they do kind of box you out of the marketing way because they have the money to be able, you want an extra 100,000 a year raise? Okay, here you go, take it. You want another 100,000 in stock options? Go ahead, take it. And a startup can't do that. Mom and pop can't do that. Small business can't do that. How do you compete?
It's obviously a great question. I think the big organizations, especially with the fully remote shift, a lot of software engineers and technical talent being allowed to work remotely, but being hired remotely kind of across the US. So it's not just on the coast. So I think you're seeing that price or that it's almost like more of a inflation of wage for certain skill sets. It can because you're no longer just competing with startups in your neighborhood and if Facebook happens to be in your neighborhood and have an office in Austin, and now you're competing with companies that aren't even in your city more often than not, but they're hiring, fully remote talent. And like you said, kind of throwing giant comp packages and bonuses and benefits and you name it. So to get to leave the daunting side and kind of talk about how can you capitalize on that, I think it's speed and flexibility. I think are the two key ways you can really kind of draw and attract the right type of talent. If you're able
pretty clear, most people don't want to do commutes anymore. They're over that. If you can work remotely, this is an ongoing trend, an ongoing topic we've had on this show. And we've talked with everybody from Soledad O'Brien to some CEOs about, there's going to be some jobs that it's 9 to 5. You got to do it 9 to 5. Okay. Now, for a lot of working professionals, though, there's some things you've got to do between 9 and 5. Most of it doesn't matter when you do it, whether it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., what kind of flexibility? Why do you need to box somebody into a cubicle or, God forbid, they have like an open work environment, or force somebody into something like that just because it pleases you, because then you can see them actually working instead of trusting the highly paid professionals that they are to actually, pay them on deliverables instead of, oh, I need your 40 hours or 50 hours or whatever it is.
I mean, you watch, you watch TV shows and movies of like the old corporate days, everyone in suits, and it's certainly, it's very traditional. But to us, the concept of everyone not even being in the office, that you're not showing up before your boss gets in and leaving the office after your boss leaves. Like, I think it's an interesting shift in responsibility, but also trust. Like, you got to trust your employees, and sometimes it's going to burn you. Other times, like, maybe it's on you to look at ways to develop a better relationship, depending on how big you are. But I thought something that was interesting, Microsoft, like, kind of workers trend type of report earlier this year, and it was talking about 40% of employees are considering making a job change. And what they're alluding to is that now that COVID was in the rearview mirror, which now it's kind of coming back, that people actually felt like they could, I think a lot of cases they didn't want to lose their benefits, their health care. There was too many changes going on. A lot of people stuck in jobs just to have the paycheck or have the benefits info in case, obviously in case they had a family member that got sick. So I think it'll be a fascinating job market over the next 3 to 6 months, because I think a lot of folks like have been considering a job move, but just haven't been willing to
I've been waiting on timing and stuff like that. And that's the other thing though, too. So companies have to compete. They're paying higher salaries now than they have over, the past probably couple decades, because wages have been pretty stagnant, they've said, except for in, specialty tech markets for the most part, or other specialty areas. So with that, what do you do about your core employees that maybe don't have that increased wages, that aren't getting paid that extra $30,000 that you have to pay someone right now a year to get them so that they don't go to Microsoft?
It's a great question. In retention, I think just as much your question was, how do you attract talent? How do you keep the talent you do have? I think a lot of companies have looked at just investing a lot of time into upskilling their own employees. So like actually allocating time to train them and grow them and help them improve. I think doing, as a smaller company, stock options, offering potential leadership opportunities, like those are ways to keep people engaged, and jumping to a Microsoft. But when Microsoft's throwing 50, 100K more compensation, guaranteed compensation, then it comes down to what is that person's motives? Like, did you recruit that person? Did you hire that person because you thought they wanted to buy into a startup? Or were they just taking that because they wanted a stepping stone to get to Microsoft, to get to Google, get to Amazon? The unique part of Austin, I think, is
Google doesn't want me. I even have I activated my Google Assistant just by saying the name. She's listening. She's listening.
Always.
I own pleasehiremegoogle.com, and they have not responded.
Really?
Yeah. They do not like me at all for some reason.
I don't doubt
In fact, it's crazy. Even right now, like I think they're trying to break up with me. I keep ordering from the Google store. Like, I'm trying to get the Chromecast with Android TVs. I already have 2 of them because I have YouTube TV and everything else Google. We just kind of bought into their ecosystem for the most part. And they keep canceling my orders even. Like I ordered it 4 times and they keep canceling it. I'm like, what the heck? I'm trying to buy a damn Chromecast, dudes. Why are you canceling my order? And it just says you violated our sales terms. And I'm like, how do I violate I'm like a platinum member in your Play Store because I spend thousands of dollars a year on apps with you guys. I'm like, come on, this is insane. But
you got to feel like slightly appreciated at the same time. The fact that they are
right. I bet you Apple, won't cancel my order, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll go back to Alexa. We'll figure that out later. But sorry, I got sidetracked there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I think we talked about it. I encourage every company I work with despite what stage they are in the tech startup journey, reevaluate your assets, your team. And if you have a senior lead software engineer, for example, like talk to me about what should that person be, receiving base salary wise, or what could they be receiving? I think recruiters are so active right now on poaching talent that
believe me, they're poaching from my team. I just lost a member a couple weeks ago, and before that, I nearly lost another member, but I was able to retain that member because they love me. I'm a good boss.
Hey, yeah, I can kind of see it, David. I feel like we're connected.
Yeah,
We're vibing that way. But it's about the relationship you have with your employees and that they believe in obviously what you're trying to do. Because they are going to have more money, more likely than not thrown at you. And as a startup, you just might not be able to compete with that on a financial stance. So where can you win? Like maybe it is benefits, maybe it is flexibility, maybe it is career upward mobility, maybe it is seeing that those stock options actually come to fruition at some point. And some folks just like being on the smaller team and getting to work on cutting edge stuff. So I think keeping people challenged is also, there's several elements I think of retention, but I do think everyone needs to kind of stop and reevaluate the market and make sure their employees are happy before they're going out and trying to hire a bunch of others. Because then you're just going to end up kind of filling holes in a ship that's sinking, and it's just a constant state of chaos. And that's when you start making the wrong hires. Or you make knee-jerk reaction hires that maybe you didn't actually, you weren't 100%, but you did it because you needed it.
The desperate moves. And they're hard to avoid because you have to kind of balance it out. I have a saying where it's, hey, keep one eye on the present, but you also got to keep one eye on the future. Because when I was growing up, this is why I originally moved from coal country, Pennsylvania, out to Mexico as soon as I turned 18 and lived there for like 15 years. It's because everybody's like, hey, you're thinking too far down in the future, your head's in the clouds, and you can't do that. It's just that type of mentality. And it really, really drove me nuts because instead of enabling me to reach dreams, it feels like I was really being prohibited. And that's why I ultimately decided to leave. But that foundation of how I've always been is core to me, because the decisions that you make today are going to determine whether or not you hit that dream in the future, whether it's a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. You're down that path. And if you choose wrong today, it's going to take you off the path. And I really think, you have to balance the future needs versus the now and immediate needs. You can't make one choice, especially around staffing, that falls into either basket.
Yeah, certainly. And there isn't always a perfect answer. I mean, it might be you need to get this product across the finish line and you need an experienced software developer to come in and knock it out. But then, now the product's in market and needs to be kind of added features and changes, and you need more leadership to hire out different teams. That person might not be the right person for that job. Maybe in the short term, it solves something. Long term. So no, I love your vision on that. And I think a lot of people, will look back at this time and just evaluate the decisions they made and what were their short-term goals versus the long-term goals.
Right.
But I'll say with tech talent, it's no joke. I mean, it's a war for talent. These folks are receiving, your employees are receiving 5, 6 email, LinkedIn messages a day from recruiters. Now, a lot of recruiters it's very generic and it's kind of blasts of like, hey, Chase, comment, dent, here's a template if you're the best fit ever for this perfect job. But others, I think companies are obviously paying more attention to kind of how to attract that talent, how to get their attention, how to speak to maybe the pain points they're feeling. And when you're throwing 200, when you're throwing large base salaries at them, it can be tempting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So startups themselves, how have they been through this whole pandemic? I have a startup that is a customer that We're working with him. This dude is doing everything he can to pay us, but he was pre-funding before the pandemic, everything, investors all lined up. So he spent the work and we kind of made a special plan for him, knowing that it was pre-pandemic and, everything checked out. He was good.
Yeah.
COVID hit, funding got pulled, and he's been paying us as much as he could. He got a couple bucks from the government with the PPP stuff, but no funding yet. He's still waiting for the new investments to come in, and it's been hard. And we've had on our show also another startup. What was it? Rock paper coin, which is in the wedding industry, and they have a software management that allows wedding people that do wedding planning to manage all third-party contracts, stuff like that. And it's really, really cool. And they built it from scratch and non-technical. And, they had some funding issues initially as well, too, because, they launched right before COVID happened. But now they have a couple customers and, the funding was starting to come in. And it's a really cool story to hear how, companies have made it through the pandemic. You're in the heart of it all. Well, not at all, but you're in the heart of a big part of the startups.
Sure.
What are you seeing?
I think it was scary at first. Like, of course, I think any company might admit that. The venture capital and the private equity scene is very active here in Austin. So they're, despite the economy, there were some companies that were fortunate enough to have locked up some type of funding that maybe carried them over or enabled them to kind of use the COVID year as a time to really build out their product and identify different market fits that they could maybe kind of shift or capitalize on. But I would say it was a time of what is our runway? What's our cash? Obviously, if we're a B2B SaaS company and we sell enterprise software, like the enterprise sales model got just flipped overnight. I mean, you're selling to big corporations, but you no longer have the face-to-face kind of typical sales type of that you'd be accustomed to.
So I want to hit you on that point because that is what I specialize in for my day job. And, we do SAP and we do Sage Intacct. And with that, the SAP world with Business One was more specifically perpetual software licenses. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody would buy software. In fact, we just had one of our first perpetual sale of the year for a new client that happened at the end of Q2. And it was large. I mean, it was like $100,000 in software. A lot of companies, and they're big in retail space as well as distribution, EDI, all that stuff. And the decision is that with all of the uncertainty, though, would you rather spend that $100,000 and own the software? I mean, you still got to pay 20% maintenance on it each year for your support and to get upgrade access, stuff like that, patch level fixes, those types of things. But it's technically optional, so you could shut it off if you want. Okay.
Yeah.
But do you want to do that, or would you rather spend the $3,000 a month in software and just do SaaS and conserve your cash flow? Now, ultimately, there's going to be it'll probably be 5,000 or 6,000 a month now that I think about it. But about 30 months is about the break-even point of how many SaaS payments it usually takes until 30 to 36 in our with SAP world until you hit the same price. Like you hit that that access point where the SaaS amount that they paid you up until that point will equal out the perpetual. But then after that, it's like, it's all extra money. I'm bringing in more money than I did before. And that's where you really get a recurring income. And the money that they're paying you is more than the money would have been with the maintenance payment on the perpetual licenses. So we're going through that big transition right now. And then you also get to the fact that, I don't know, maybe just because, ERP is an older school industry. I started in it around age of 30, 31. I'm 38 now. But with that, I was probably the youngest sales rep that they've ever hired up until that point, and by probably double digits, because they really took a chance on me. So I was already used to doing things, and I was in a market like Los Angeles. So for me to do the video call, stuff like that, it was easy. But there were some customers that, hey, before I give you a $500,000 check or $1 million check or even a $50,000 check, I want to look you in the eye and shake your head. They want those warm and fuzzies, and you couldn't get around it. But I think, again, like I said earlier about how COVID kind of pushed us off the digital transformation edge, that's where people got comfortable with it. And one of the things that we did was like, hey, look, cameras on. I got my whole sales team, cameras on. Okay. I have one older sales rep, does not like to turn his camera on, blames it on technical difficulties. He now has his camera on every single call, even if they have their camera off, because when you're talking to them, I don't want them to see you rolling your eyes or think that you might be rolling your, oh yeah. We can totally do that.
Yeah.
Because you're the yes man, you're the sales guy. We want them to see you so that they can see the conviction and you've got to build that relationship, that personal relationship, and give them the warm and fuzzies digitally. You've got to do it through the camera. That's your tools. That's what we've been given. And, to be fair, we've, at least for Vision 33, we were number one net new names North America last year, again, for SAP Business One. My region was the number one region out of, for Vision 33. So it's kind of worked out. So that's how our industry has kind of evolved with the sales cycle, the sales process. And, we're seeing that big change to SaaS. Yes, ultimately it costs them more money, but if in a year they need to downsize, they're able to downsize. They're not stuck paying maintenance on licenses they don't need. So there are some benefits to it.
Absolutely. And David, we all don't have the voice that you have, the presence that you have on camera, man. I think that's a skill that you're probably underlooking or undervaluing, but it's a major shift. And I see your argument on.
Well, that's why, hold on. Sorry to interrupt. But that's why in the beginning of every episode, I started off, hey, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. I'm your glamorous host, David Strausser. I do that just for that reason, Chase.
No, I love it. And I think it's spot on. But in sales, it's a presentation. It's a performance in a lot of cases. It's an excitement. You're trying to generate that buzz, and someone that's used to doing that in person, and now they got to figure out how to do it like this in this kind of environment from their kitchen at home. Like you said, people do.
When you get into technical sales, enterprise sales, though, man, it's also, I think the sales rep position is, yes, you've got to be a hunter. Yes, you've got to be aggressive, but ultimately, think of sports, because you're a sports centric guy. You said a game manager. Okay. Yeah. Like Peyton Manning, when he won his last Super Bowl, he was essentially just a game manager. And if he managed that game, he was going to win the Super Bowl because the team around him was that darn good. Yeah. Same thing with sales reps, in these types of industries. You're a game manager. When I got to hire somebody, I want somebody that knows how to manage a sales cycle. That means that you're surrounded by a million experts. You need to know which experts you bring in. Then you tell them, say this, not that. Okay. And then when they're talking in front of them, you shut up, you let them talk. Okay. So you don't get yourself dug in a hole, but you've got to be that guide rail. You know,
Yeah.
If it goes down a rabbit hole, you got to bring it back to home plate. You know what I mean? So that's the number one thing that I look for with my guys.
And to your initial question, like how do the startups kind of compete in that environment? I think that's the complicated part, as you kind of mentioned, is that some of these startups, I mean, their product might not be at a state where it's an easy implementation and software update where it's implemented. I mean, in a lot of cases, there might be a lot of work going in, even co-founders or, VPs that are player coaches at some of these smaller companies that are trying to get a deal across the finish line.
Right.
Some of the startups only need one or two big enterprise deals to lock that next round of funding.
Yep.
So I think that's where it can be a huge challenge when you don't get to be in person and kind of maybe get to move them on your story and how you got there versus just which software is better, which one's cheaper. I'm going to take that one.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. I mean, software in a lot of cases, it's becoming more commoditized, I think, a little bit because people are more educated. I mean, it's kind of like look at buying a cell phone or look at buying a car, how that has evolved and changed. I mean, back in the 90s, it's like you almost needed an engineering degree in order to sell a cell phone service and a plan. And it took hours of explanations to explain it to everybody and sell it. It was a high paying, high tech gig. Now, I mean, it's done by high school kids because people are smarter. They're educated. It's been around. And the same thing is happening in the software world and the enterprise world. It really comes down to the one part is that every company is different. They all have that unique specialness that is their magic sauce. And that magic sauce is something that, you're probably not going to be able to see off a website or a pre-recorded demo video. And you need to see that little bit of a custom piece. And I think it's really going to come down to that part in the future of how sales go. Just my outlook on the future of software.
I can appreciate that.
So let me ask you, man, how can people get in touch with you, get in touch with aim4hire? How can people digitally stalk you? I said digitally, eh? So if anybody actually stalks you, not from the show.
It's not liable for that.
Yeah, not liable.
Well, myself and our team members, I mean, we live on LinkedIn. So that would be number one is looking at aim4hire or any, myself, Chase Kocher on LinkedIn. Frankly, I would say that that's even a better avenue than texting or calling me if I gave out my cell number. And my email address, is chase@aim4hire.com. Pretty simple,
and it's number
science.
4.
Yeah,
number
4, correct.
Yeah.
In our logo, it's
number 4 hire.
Yeah, and the 4, it's half of an arrow. So the concept is aiming upward. It's aiming for higher. I think.
So we're gonna blame that. We're gonna blame that on your brother, right? No, I'm kidding. It's a beautiful
100%. No, anything that goes wrong, it's on him. I just sit here and smile.
Goes right, you take credit. That's awesome. Oh, hey, Chase, this has been fun, man. Fun, like industry overview, talking about tech, talking about software, talking about work, all things I love, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed yourself, man.
David, thank you, man. It was great. Honestly, not big on being shark bait normally, but in this case, it's been fun. So,
it kind of worked out, man. I'm going to start maybe next season. I'll get I survived being shark bait t-shirts and send it out 100%. To people that have been on, and then get them to post a picture of that with their episode links. That's what I'm thinking, man. That's how I'm going to evolve the show one day.
Yeah, it's got to be a t-shirt and like a post-game picture or interview of how did you doing there? I guess Shark, yeah.
But well, Ben, great talking with you. Thank you again, and please make sure you reach out to aim4hire. Thanks. Cheers. Oh wow, that was an awesome chat with Chase, right? First, y'all know the routine. If you found this interview helpful, if it sparked those warm and fuzzies, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. But if you really want to help us out, Okay, help out Shark Bite Biz, help out aim4hire, two of the best kept secrets out there in the business world. Share this out to your friends. Get it out there. Get your network to learn who Shark Bite Biz and aim4hire are. This was an awesome interview. I really loved it. So let's get back to our rock star guest, Chase, okay? First, I've got to say, I'm amazed at how much a city like Austin has transformed over the years. It always fascinates me listening to somebody like Chase discuss how it's progressed over the course of his lifetime. Austin, when Chase was 10, is going to be totally different to how Austin is now. And I'm also really glad to see how things are kind of moving away from Silicon Valley. I think a location like Silicon Valley is great. It served its purpose. There's still a lot of great stuff up there, but really stunts growth. I mean, a lot of great ideas go to Silicon Valley to just die, okay? But if those same people went to Austin, San Diego, even Philly's startup community, those same companies would thrive. I mean, hate to say it, but they are a little snobby up there. You know, that's where it is. It's more elite and it's super expensive. You can get way much more bang for your buck in one of those alternative startup markets. These alternative Silicon Valleys, I guess you can call them. Second, starting a business with family, that's a huge taboo subject in this show. Our guests usually advise against that, as do I from my past experiences, but Chase and his younger but taller brother make it work, and apparently they kind of work off each other. I think that competitiveness that they've had growing up, stuff like that, really helps them grow and manage their business. I'm pretty confident that they probably, play off each other's weaknesses pretty good, which is a motivator, and they probably balance out each other like perfect chemistry. So whatever it is, these brothers got a recipe for success. Kudos to them. Keep going, keep it in the family, keep rocking it. Lastly, the job market. It is hard. Businesses just like mine, where I work during my day job, Vision 33, we're suffering to attract high quality talent, and we are a larger organization, 400 or 500 employees globally. Work from home is the future, as is working with deliverables, though. And that's something I'm very big on, being the manager that takes care of the Northeast and the East Coast for our two different product lines. And I think we have that quite established on our show, though. I mean, we've had experts, we've had, a million people on the show discussing exactly that. And competing for talent, though, is really what is tough. Even if you give the flexibility of, okay, it's not 9 to 5, you're doing it by deliverables. We expect these deliverables are going to take you about 40 hours a week or whatever. Even if you do that, competing for talent is tough. It is very hard. That's why we had a whole episode on culture with David Friedman the other day. And it's good on one hand, because I think wages have been very stagnant. If there's one thing our generation, okay, and unfortunately I'm a millennial, although I refer to myself as a zennial, as should anybody born in 83, Google that. If there's one thing that this generation suffers from, it's increased cost, inflations, and stagnant wages. Maybe this helps correct the wage issue, but as we discussed, that brings up a whole new slew of challenges, okay? What if for the same job, due to current, hiring conditions, you have to pay somebody $25,000 more? What do you do for an existing employee? Again, for a same exact role. If they're a different sex or a different race, that could possibly set you up for lawsuits over discrimination. Remember, not legal advice. This is common business law 101. There's a lot of layers to this onion, and, it gets very messy. And ultimately, though, I do think that this ends up working out better for everybody. It will benefit us more in the future. So, question of the day: how has the great resignation affected you? Leave a comment down below on YouTube. Remember, if you want to be in the show, shoot an email to interviews@sharkbitebiz.com. Please remember to join the channel. $3 a month. You can become a baby shark here on YouTube. Or deadhousecoffee.com. Use code SHARK, get 20% off, get fresh coffee delivered to your doorstep, and help this channel support itself. Remember, everybody, I'm David Strausser. This is Shark Bite Biz. We'll see you all next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Shark Bite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.